expecting to act on it that night. That'd give you time to review it all.
Trustee and civic clerk.
Sure.
All right, good. We're ready to get started, that's fine. Just like to make sure we got it all straightened out before I look through it again. All right, we're all here, very good. I'm calling to order this November meeting of Louisa County Planning Commission. We'll start with roll call. Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Jarvis?
Here.
Mr. Barlow?
Here.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Weaver? Mr. Disasway?
Here.
Mr. Woodward?
Here.
Mr. Quarles? Mr. Goodwin?
Here.
Mr. Dickerson? Mr. Purcell?
Here.
Thank you. All rise, please. We'll,
You
for,
have to ask Ellis why he's not here.
thank you, Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. We'll do the standing up, so it's official. Mr. Ellis, can you please tell us why you're not here for the record?
I'm away on business in Niantic, Connecticut.
Very good, thank you. All right, that's all right. Now, we'll have the invocation led by Mr. Goodwin and Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Woodward.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We know that no day is promised to us, and every day is a blessing. And as we think about blessings, we give you thanks for the successful medical treatment of Commissioner Dickerson's wife this week, the good news that we got from them, and I know your guiding hands were with the doctors that were treating her. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and consider the business of the county, the citizens, our neighbors. We ask that you bless us with wisdom and civility as we go about this, and we ask in his name. Amen.
Amen.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. The agenda is presented before us here. Do we have a motion to approve as presented? So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll make one note of comment as we go. Commissioner Weaver requested that we not take up the CUP for, or we defer the CUP for GK Structures for the rezoning. What we're going to do is we're going to open, since we do have people here who are willing to speak on this, and we don't miss that opportunity, we're going to begin that rezoning action and open the public hearing so we can hear from those who are here, and we'll hold the public hearing open until next month, and we'll complete the action on that next month. So any other comments, or do I have, let's see, I have the motion second. Any other comments on the agenda as presented? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Wait a minute, we're voting.
Oh, voting. I'm sorry. I'm moving along with a voice vote.
President voting,
I got a problem with it because I'm not present.
I'm not either.
Join the meeting.
Do I hit save?
I don't know.
And if you'd like,
Where'd it go?
I can do it.
I've missed the whole thing.
Current.
Oh, I didn't join the meeting.
I've got to go back and join the meeting, I guess.
You should
I've
be.
lost
Oh, there it
mine.
is. Folks, this is an electronic method to speed things up and make it much more efficient, so bear with us, please.
What's the speak, detail, help? Oh, we got problems
I'm waiting to see if,
Yeah, I don't
I
have.
got a request to speak. That's if you're at home, I guess.
Big surprise
I had
is
it.
that I actually got it right this time.
Here we go, present voting.
Okay.
And approval.
Turn that blue button over there.
approval of agenda.
Blue and the green.
That says request
may
to
have to
speak in
reset it.
detail.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Deborah?
I'm gonna actually reset it.
Okay.
Mr. Woodward, I do see you on now,
Okay.
so you should be able to vote.
Do you see me?
I do see you on. Mr. Woodward, Mr. Disasway, and Mr. Goodwin are opposed.
I don't see any way to vote, though.
No, not yet.
Yeah, you may see
Don't
me,
see
but I don't
red.
see you.
What if you got to refresh?
Joined up
Mhm.
here, but,
Let's see. We have the approval of agenda, and, I'm not sure why it's not coming up.
it never does well for me.
Well,
So it's a
I
constant
got the same problem.
Let me back out here and see, I had to do.
It came up earlier about present and voting or absent and voting. I hit present
Present voting,
and then it asked me to save and I saved it.
Okay.
And it went away.
then it went away. Let's see.
Mine just came
Oh,
up,
you're there.
so. This page I was on when it came up. This one?
I'm not sure, Mr. Disasway, if you want, I can do it on my end, or we don't have to electronic vote.
Well, why don't we tell you what our vote is and you
That's
can
fine.
record it for us?
I
How
can
about
do
that?
That's no problem.
I vote yes.
I know what to do on my end, but as far as your devices, I'm not 100% sure why they're not coming up.
Did you get my vote?
Are we all voting yes?
Mr.
I
Brooks,
vote.
how do you vote?
Yes.
I did not see
Is it
you
not a
vote,
yes?
Mr. Goodwin. No?
Okay, well, I vote yes.
Okay,
I vote yes.
It sounds like we're all voting yes.
okay.
I
can
can't
mark
speak
you
for
all as
Mr.
yes.
Quarles.
That's fine.
We do have to check with Mr. Quarles.
Yes.
He's voting yes as well.
Okay.
All right,
Man, I gotta get over that.
so then I think we can move forward with the minutes now. The minutes were provided to you as a separate item with the packet. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes
So
of the
moved.
October meeting?
Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. Any discussion on the minutes from the October meeting? Very well, then we'll go on to vote on the minutes from the October meeting. We'll try this again.
Oh, there it is,
I
yeah.
got it.
Now I don't have it.
George's didn't come up.
Do I
Mine
have
came
to-
up the first
do I have
time,
to
didn't
hit
come up the
save?
second time.
You have to hit save, yeah.
Nope.
It just doesn't appear they've been recorded.
Maybe all of them have to be in. It's been approved.
I vote yes.
I didn't hear from Mr. Quarles. Is everyone yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Quarles,
Yes.
thank you, sir.
I don't know why it's not coming up now.
It doesn't appear to be. All right. Well, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We do not have a consent agenda for this month. So next item up is public address. Public address period is a time when anyone in the audience can come forward and speak to the planning commission on anything that they wish to that is not a part of a public hearing for tonight's meeting. So I'm going to open the public address period and see if we have anyone. Public address period is open. If anyone would like to address the planning commission on something that is not a part of the meeting agenda tonight, please step forward. Very well, not seeing any, then I'll close the public address period. Public address period is closed. Under unfinished business, we had a report during work session on comprehensive plan items that are coming due that we'll receive prior to the December meeting for review and consideration during the December meeting, I believe, or work session December meeting.
That is correct. Work session in December with a public hearing and vote on in January.
Very good. The other item, have we had a meeting yet on the Ag and Forestal District lands in the zoning outside of
We have,
A1 and A2
we
in
have
Ag and
not,
Forestal
Mr.
District?
Chairman.
We have not. Have we not been able to get that scheduled?
That's correct.
That's something that's been ongoing for many months now, so we need to get that scheduled and get that done. All right, that includes unfinished business. We'll move on to the public hearings. The first public hearing tonight is CUP 2023-06, Christopher and Catherine Meyer. Mr. Eglin.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Tom Eglin. I'm the Senior Planner for Louisa County's Community Development Department. Before you tonight is a conditional use permit request, 2023-06, to allow for the use agricultural operation on parcel zone residential R2 listed in your application that total 42.51 acres. The properties are located north of Tollersville Road, Route 667, just outside the town of Mineral's northeast boundary. The properties are located in the Mineral District. The subject properties are in the mineral growth area and are designated as low-density residential on the 2040 Louisa County Comprehensive Plan's future land use map. Staff's professional opinion is the proposed agricultural operation would not negatively impact the future land use plan nor the growth area. Furthermore, the proposed request supports the county's goal of maintaining the rural agricultural character of Louisa County. The applicant has included a written letter from the Spicer family in their application found as enclosure 2 on pages 22 to 24 of your staff packet that indicates the time frame in which farming operations occurred on these properties. Dating back to 1969, the subject property was originally zoned general residential R2, as you can see on the current slide showing the map from 1969. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit request to allow for the use agricultural operation in the residential general R2 zoning district with 3 conditions. This concludes staff's report. The applicant is here and is willing to give you a presentation.
All right, do we have any questions for staff at this time?
Yes.
Mr.
Chair.
Woodward?
Mr. Eglin, do you know whether or not there's going to be any allowance of biosolids being applied to the property?
I do not, but I'm sure the applicant will probably answer that question, whether they plan to fertilize using that method.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eglin.
All right. All right, very good. I'm going to open the public comment period now. Public comment period is open. The first to address the public, to address the commission during the public comment period is traditionally the applicant. So if the applicant would come forward, you'll have 10 minutes to address us. And someone is keeping time?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm Chris Meyer. My wife and my kids were not able to make it tonight. They're at soccer practice and horse lessons, and so Thursday's our busy night. So just going to touch on the request. Those are my kids. That's on the property. That's the first day we went and looked at it, and then that was this summer while we were baling some hay up. Quick about my wife and I, we both grew up on farms. My wife, I was labor for my wife for about 10, 15 years as she ran her family business. Again, we bought the farm in 2023. Our goal is to raise our children with working knowledge of livestock, learn hard work, environmental stewardship, and then obviously being a member of the community. Again, the community conditional use for A2. It's been in ag since as far as the Spicer family can tell us, which is the early 1900s. The community and mineral community knows it as the Spicer Farm. That's what they refer to it. And then other than the map, we haven't had some real clear delineation on when it was rezoned or zoned from R2, or if it's been R2 the entire time. I do know it's been a farm for the last 100+ years. There's the property. Just thought it was a cool shot. We know that when we originally bought the property, it was in R2, and we wanted to, make sure we were following all laws and ordinances, which is why we're here. As it stands right now, I can't have a cow or a horse on 42 acres. That would be illegal, so that's why we're here. It's important for our family to follow all the local laws and ordinances. The request is simple. We just want to keep using it the way it's been used. I know the condition, just in case there are some questions, I know there's lots of people that understand ag, but the 1.5 to 2 acre animals per acre can change based on the carrying capacity. And if we really wanted to dive into it, we could, but those are all the kind of the things here on this slide here that kind of go over the variance for determining the actual number of animals per acre. We thought 1.5 to 2 acres was a reasonable request, which matches most of what the state's doing. I think it's gone up a little bit in some places. Again, part of that number is the variability of soil. So there's 7 types, 3 streams/creeks and a pond, and a bunch of slope. So it changes. That's why we went with the 1.5 to 2 acres. Like they mentioned earlier, it matches with the comprehensive growth. We've already worked with the Louisa County High School and the biology class. They came out and helped us plant riparian buffer a couple weeks ago. And they did some water quality testing. The stream from that pond and that stream there goes directly into Freshwater Creek, which goes directly into Lake Anna. Dominion also came out and assisted. They planted another 300 trees in that same project, so somewhere around 540 hardwood trees, giving up roughly 1.8 acres for a riparian buffer. To answer your question about biosolids, we didn't have any intention to. If that's a sticking point, we can, however you guys advise on that. We've used them in the past, but being that close to town, I know how that can get. Plus, by the time you separate all the buffer zones for the water, we'd probably have a strip anyways, so most likely we would not. The only other request question I had is for the Planning Commission to consider changing the verbiage or eliminating the condition 2, which allows the Board of Supervisor or their designee to enter the property at any reasonable time without notice. As most people know about animals, they can be unpredictable. And I know there's a little bit of a problem with leaving gates open and animals escaping. I'm a little hesitant or a little concerned for that specific verbiage to say anyone can come onto the property at any time. I'm happy, we're extremely agreeable. It puts a ton of liability on us for anybody to walk onto the property at any time. I know that's kind of been the standard verbiage in these conditional uses, but given that it's a family residence, I really want to make sure that someone doesn't come onto our property and get hurt. Any questions?
Questions for the applicant? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on with the public address portion. So anyone who would like to speak on this may come forward. I did not have any cards on this. If you'd like to speak, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Unless you represent an organization, you'll have to let me know if you do. Those representing an organization will have 5 minutes to speak. So is anyone here that would like to speak on this application? Very well. So normally we have the applicant come up to respond to anything they've heard during the public address portion and to have 5 minutes to discuss that, but I think we can dispense with that unless there's something more you'd like to say. Very good. So I'm going to close public address period and bring this back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks.
the request to revise the Board of Supervisors' right to visit anytime they want, how do we handle that?
Staff's got to respond to that.
I think so, and see if there's some acceptable wording. So, Mr. Eglin, can you come up and speak to that, please?
Sir, for the least 6 years I've been here, that has been the language that's been used. I would have to defer to legal counsel to determine whether it would be prudent to change that language going forward.
Well, let me just ask this question. Does the phrase "have the right to inspect the site at any reasonable time without prior notice," does that allow for unrestricted access, or does that allow for a request for inspection? Just to clarify what the words really mean.
Read the language one more time, please.
Well, I have it here, what was provided in the staff packet. The Board of Supervisors or their designated representative have the right to inspect the site at any reasonable time without prior notice.
And your question was,
The question is, does that allow for someone who wants to inspect the site to walk on the site without notifying anyone? Or, I mean, can they pull up in the driveway and say, "We're here to inspect the site now, please walk us through," since the concern is for the gates?
sure, I believe the language as written would allow that.
Would allow them,
Would allow a representative of the Board of Supervisors or a member of staff to conduct at a reasonable time. Generally, that's used to mean something between 9 and 5, to come on the site, to inspect as it is reasonably related to the the condition to which the provision applies, right? You couldn't just do it for any purpose. It would have to be.
certainly.
Yeah.
But would that allow them to go on the site without escort at all?
Yes.
Okay, that was what I was trying to get
Yes.
clarified. All right. Is
Mr.
there,
Chair,
Mr. Goodwin?
follow up on that. The applicant's concern was liability. Are Board of Supervisors or their representatives covered for liability if they go onto a site?
Again, I would have to defer to legal counsel on that question.
Tough questions tonight. First meeting back. Generally speaking, as employees of the county, the county would be responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of its own individuals. If there were some unreasonably safe condition present, it would function, in my mind, and from the top of my head, as potentially exposing some landowner to liability, certainly. To take it all the way out to the extreme, right? There are some cases that address this about things like booby traps, spring guns, anything like that, right? For an ordinary workplace injury, the landowner would likely not be held responsible in that case. There's a host of questions in the middle, but it would, if the site is unreasonably safe, then certainly some court could find that posed an unreasonable risk to the person entering the site under the authority of that particular language.
Thank you.
I'm trying to decide now whether the unhappy disposition of an animal might fall into one of those categories because, and I would hope not, but it's possible that an employee might not have a good concept of how animals react and not understand the potential danger of being in with certain animals. So I think it's a valid concern on the landowner's part.
Sure. My experience has been, too, and I'll give it a legal basis as well. If someone conducting an inspection under authority of this permission granted were to come on site and place themselves in harm's way by going uninvited and unescorted into an animal area, that would be a very difficult case to make that there was some negligence on the part of the landowner. It has been my practical experience that these kinds of conditions for inspections are common in not only local permitting actions, but also in federal and state permitting actions. I can't claim to have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything that can happen to an inspector when they come on site, but barring something unreasonable on the part of the landowner, that would not impose liability on that landowner. The unreasonable actions of a visitor the liability for that would rest on the visitor. So, and I would say if you're going to go into let's say, I've farmed cattle before in my life. If you're going to go into a cattle pen on someone's property without letting them know you're there, or gauging the relative disposition or mood of that cattle, you'd be assuming the risk yourself. So it's all really premised on reasonable landowners and reasonable government actors.
All right.
I think, Mr. Chair, what also comes in there is whether you went towards a threat or the threat came to you. And in this case, you are going towards a threat as an inspector.
Sure. And you undertake whatever risk that might be.
Exactly.
OSHA inspectors at a factory know better than, and if they enter into those areas that expose them to harm, they take the responsibility for that harm. But these are not uncommon, and I can say that in my time with the county previously, as well as my permitting experience, it's pretty common condition.
I'm thinking about one final follow-up on that, which is, if someone comes on to do an inspection without notifying, unescorted, and leaves gates open such that animals get out, then it would seem to me like there would be some liability on the county's part in that regard. I don't know, though.
I would agree.
You would? Okay.
Certainly, I would
All
agree.
right.
I would say that the limits of that liability would fall within the Virginia Tort Claims Act, but they would, absolutely.
All right.
And the procedure would be to make a claim first, to, you send a demand letter to the county and the county responds to it. But yes, there are provisions for government actors even doing damage to both property and chattel.
Okay. So I guess the question that we're left with now with the applicant is whether or not this satisfies the concerns, this discussion, or does the applicant wish to make some other change?
I mean, I'm not a lawyer.
Neither are we.
By any stretch. I think there's lots of, you're an expert on this, but that doesn't mean there's an expert that can prove 10 things the opposite direction in a court of law. And the last thing I want to do is end up in a court of law where, I'm in front of a judge or jury, or a cow getting loose and, running into a school bus, or, of course, that's one extreme. But, if I go drill 20 holes because I'm putting a new fence line up and an inspector comes and breaks their leg, is that unreasonable or reasonable? I don't know. I feel like this opens me up for a fair bit of liability. I mean, Farm Bureau posts signs on, welcome to, a farm, this is a working farm, you assume all liability, but this, conditional use permit it doesn't lay out all that says. It says board of supervisor or representative in reasonable time can come and inspect the property without escort, essentially. So unless that representative wants to knock on the door, they don't have to per the way this is written. So, my concern is maybe we tailor the language to say, hey, it'd be nice to have an escort on this ag operation. I mean, the OSHA inspectors still get, an escort. I work for the fire department. If I want to go into a building, I still have to be escorted. So that's my, concern.
Yeah. Mr. Eglin, you have a comment for us?
Nope, just returning to the podium in case you have a question.
I was hoping you had the magic bullet here, but, so,
If I could?
Yes,
I'll
Mr. Mullins.
pick up your example, and I may not sound like much of an expert either, but in the example that you gave, it was kind of a Rube Goldberg series of events where an inspector comes on site, leaves the gate open, the cow escapes, gets out into a road and damages somebody, right? There is a case that's kind of like that. It's Paul's Graph case. It's a liability case where the standard of reasonable foreseeability to the cause, right? The cause of the harm. Passenger getting on board a train, gets jerked by the arm, drops the fireworks that they're carrying, injures somebody standing down the train platform. one of the funner cases to study in law school, real case. And in that case, they say nobody could reasonably foresee that kind of thing. So I do feel fairly comfortable. I understand your concern as a farm owner myself.
Yeah.
But you being held liable for the negligent act of the inspector who comes on by virtue of the grant of authority given here tonight, if in fact it is fairly low. I'm not aware of any case imposing liability on a landowner in those cases, and I can also tell you as a matter of practice, they have very little desire or want to
Sure.
come out and just stomp around your property
Sure.
while you're digging fence posts.
They can pitch in if they'd like.
That's why they don't want to come.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if we've resolved that or not. I suppose one thing we could do, though, if we approve this tonight and send it forward to the board, then we could request that this language be resolved to everybody's satisfaction before it reaches the board. Is that or would, Mr. Gillespie, why don't you come talk to us about this as well?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I was looking at you and you were looking at me, and something had to be said. So, I will say, code enforcement is within the purview of the department, of course, and so the inspectors are under my management. They would contact the owner. The board members have no interest. It will always be their designees. In practice, that's the way it works. So that would be us. For the one condition involved, we're looking at 1.5 to 2 acres per head of large animals. So we're looking at essentially 20 or maybe slightly more than that animals on the property, which can generally be surveyed to some degree from the road. From the roadside or the driveway, and we would say, hello, Mr. Meyer, Mrs. Meyer. I would expect them, if they park in a location that is potentially hazardous, to turn on their flashers. I would expect them to put on a reflective vest, and I would expect them to close their door. All of those things could be hazards themselves, which are near Mr. Meyer's property, but on the state land. So there are common sense things that our inspectors do. The idea of being able to inspect an activity without notice is for activities that need to be inspected without notice sometimes. In this case, again, some of it can be surveyed from roadside. The rest of it, we would let Mr. Meyer know, or Mrs. Meyer, that we were going to, we received a complaint, looked like there were 50 head of cattle out there, and we were gonna look into it, and we would ask for an escrow on the property. So, again, not the letter of the condition or the law, but in practice, that's what we would do.
Very well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I just heard Mr. Gillespie correctly, then we'll need to change the language of this condition to state that the landowner will be contacted prior to entering the property.
Correct.
Yeah,
And,
that would
and
seem,
that's what you, if I heard you correctly.
Good one. I don't want to counter that. I would just say, as a matter of practice, that's what we would do. Not necessarily in the condition. So we've been advised that the condition, as a standard condition, is helpful for all future cases, and all cases came before for consistency of language and action, that there not be a wrinkle or a change related to inspection. And so we would undertake the method of notification, inspection, contact that's appropriate for the property. I would, again, posit in this case, it's easy enough to drive to the driveway and knock on the door. We have Mr. Meyer's number. It's actually very easy to contact him before you get out there. So, this is an easy one to find out if there's a condition that a complaint has been made that it's not any consistency. Again, there's only one condition on the property.
Mr. Chair, I get that's practice, but words matter. And this CUP will travel with the property.
yes, it will.
So if we're going to address the concern, we need to address the words. If we're not going to address it and leave it like it is, then the applicant will have to accept that as one of the conditions on the CUP. But it doesn't work to say, this is what the words say, but that's not how we really do things. Because the next zoning administrator can come in here and have a totally different view about on-site inspections. So I think words matter. We need to get it right, or we say, this is what we mean.
I would agree. It's a method of getting from here to there at this point.
Change without to with.
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to let staff and the attorney and the applicant work on this between now and the board meeting to the point that all parties are satisfied. If it so pleases you.
That was generally the direction I was heading in at the time. Any other comments on this one?
Mr. Chairman, to bring up what Mr. Woodward brought up about biosolids.
Yes, Mr. Brooks.
Didn't know if the applicant, he said it was okay putting that as a condition, that you would not be using biosolids.
Yeah, if that pleases the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
commission, that's fine. Yeah, like I said, for the biosolids, like I said, it would be such a small strip because we're surrounded by water that I can't remember the exact setbacks, but between the property boundaries and the waterway, yeah, I'm sorry, yep. Because there's so much water on the property and we're so close to the boundary lines, I would imagine that I would be able to apply much biosolids anyway, so that's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
once again, the next person coming in here may say, I want to do it. So if we want to make it a condition that biosolids not be used on property that is zoned residential, we need to make that a condition. The current applicant is not the final one in all cases.
I concur, and I was going to add that,
Okay.
yes.
But
Mr. Woodward.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The question is, in the time I've been on here, we haven't have anybody ask us to be able to do any agricultural things on residentially zoned property. So I don't know what the situation is legally, because I believe that we have to comply with state law with biosolids. And I don't know whether the state has any type of thing that says that maybe they can't be applied in a residential area. I don't know. So if we could ask maybe the county attorney that.
Well, we can. We did take up an issue about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago.
On agricultural and residential?
Yes, agricultural and residential.
Down in Holly Grove?
It was off
Yeah.
Owens Creek Road, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yep,
And that was, they were R1?
yeah,
Yep.
yep.
I didn't
R2.
know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arson's
Well, I don't
in
think
there.
we brought up anything about biosolids.
No.
Because it wasn't near town.
Well, so if we put an item in here that the applicant agrees with, to not use biosolids, then it really doesn't matter at that point, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
That's
all
true.
right, good.
But if state already is covering this, there's no need us to do anything on it anyway.
But they could change their mind.
Well, that's true. That's
Okay.
true.
And Mr. Jarvis is not here now, but I'm sure he would appreciate not
I-
having biosolids that close to his town.
I think
so
you're exactly right.
I think we'll take care of him as well. Any other comments? All right, then I'm going to pass the gavel over here, since I need to make a motion here. If I can get everything together in front of me that I need to make the motion with. So in the matter of CUP 2023-02, Christopher and Catherine Meyer, application to operate agriculture in a residential district. I would make a motion to approve that CUP with one additional condition that biosolids not be applied to the land, and also with a request that the applicant work with community development and legal to make some adjustments in condition number 2 to get the wording right prior to, on inspecting the land and coming on the property prior to the Board of Supervisors review.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There's no further discussion. Guess we're ready to vote. I've had this up on my screen now since we started.
I
Anybody
still
see it?
am not getting it. Let me go back and see if I need to rejoin the meeting.
I'm good.
Yours, huh?
Oh, you already voted?
I already voted. It was sitting up there the
How'd
whole
you do
time.
that?
It was up there waiting.
All I got is leave meeting.
Don't leave the meeting yet. Please don't leave the meeting yet.
It's always one.
I think there are about 3 this time.
It is.
I'm not getting it.
You and I were the ones that couldn't get it, but she did something, and they're the two that,
Mr.
I know.
Justiceway,
Yes,
I have 2 votes. Can I do a roll call?
yes, please do a roll call vote, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Justiceway and Mr. Woodward as yes. Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Thank you.
okay,
All right,
motion passes.
you can whack away if you want.
Close the public hearing.
Well, the public
You
hearing
already
was
closed
closed on
it,
that,
I guess.
yeah. Very good. All right, thank you. So next we'll move on. And again, as I mentioned when we were approving the agenda, Commissioner Weaver, whose district rezoning 2023-06 is in. Mr. Weaver was unavoidably unable to be with us tonight. He requested that we defer this rezoning request. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the public hearing on this. We'll have the staff report. We'll open the public hearing so that those of you who have come tonight to speak on this, we can capture your comments, and we'll hold the public hearing open until the December meeting and complete that then. So, Mr. Eglin.
Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, before you tonight,
Mike's not on, there we go. Chairman and members of the commission, before you tonight is a rezoning 2023-06 to rezone 21.954 acres of parcel 73-6-4 from agricultural A1 to agricultural A2 to permit the property to be divided into 7 single-family residential lots. The property is located in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Jefferson Highway, US Route 33, and Hallstore Road, State Route 612, with approximately 534 feet on US Route 33 and 1,803 feet on State Route 612. The property is in the Jackson election district. The origin of the agricultural A2 and A1 zoning districts is worth noting because in 1996, the County of Louisa presented citizens with property zone agricultural the option to either be rezoned from agricultural A1 to agricultural A1 or A2. Staff conducted research on this property and found that the owner then, Ronald and Helen Sharp, responded to a letter from the county indicating their preference to have this property assigned to the A1 zoning district in 1996. The slide that you have here shows the proposed layout that the applicant would be presenting tonight if the applicant was here. And this concludes staff's report.
Very good. I'm going to dispense with comments from the board to the staff since we'll be having you back to make your report again in December and go directly to the public address period. So I'm going to open the public address period on this rezoning request. Public address period is open. I have 4 cards. So I'm going to call your name. When I do, please come to the microphone and state your name and your voting district, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So first up, put my glasses on. First up is Virginia Robinson, who will be followed by Bruce Corson.
restarted?
Oh,
Oh my
no,
gosh.
that's-
No,
Hold
we'll
on.
restart it.
Hold
Technical
on.
difficulty, I apologize.
It's hard enough. Okay. My name is Virginia Robinson. I live in the Jackson district. In case I lose you over the next 3 minutes, let me say up front, I am not in favor of the rezoning. And although this is a critical point of anything else I say, I can't leave it at that. It seems we are expected to give quantifiable explanations as to why we want or don't want something, why we do or do not do something. And frequently, these reasons we give don't come close to the driving force of our behavior. Take, for example, the handout that Mr. Giannossi gave me in October. Nowhere on this sheet does it state that GK Structures is a business that will profit far more, I would guess, if it sells 7 homes rather than 3. The motivating force of action, not even mentioned. My point is this. I have 3 reasons that bring me to stand in front of you, each one a motivating force. 1, Hall Store Road, well-traveled. I know it well by car, bicycle, and foot. It's a typical country road, fairly narrow, unmarked, no shoulders, not seemingly designed for more and more development. What GK Structures is already building on this road will increase the traffic. And certainly 7 more families with at least 2 cars each will increase the volume further. 2, our wooded hardwood forest that borders GK Structures is a natural preserve for all creatures, great and small. I like it that way. It is why we have not timbered it. And because of this, it is also a great temptation of wayward hunters to set up temporary tree stands, put up game cams, et cetera, et cetera. More homes, more people. I'm a fan of trees. The building of 7 homes rather than 3 will make it necessary to remove more trees. Our rural Louisa is becoming a county ripe for overdevelopment. Trees are cut, land is cleared, habitats are destroyed, and always under the umbrella of being better for the community. I'll feel certain that is not always a true motivation for development. In conclusion, please refer to 2040 Louisa Comprehensive Plan in your three statements. Conserve and preserve the county's rural character and way of life. Protect, establish, and future communities. One last sentence. Well, I am standing here to conserve and preserve the established rural character of my property. Thank you for letting me go over.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Bruce Corson, to be followed by Kenneth Rogers.
Yeah, Virginia is my wife, and I agree with her completely. We have a farm that borders this property. I do not want to see 7 houses there. I agree with her. The Hall Store Road and 33 is a very dangerous intersection. Unless it's at night, you can't see the lights coming over the hill. I think the idea that he wants to put a driveway between Hall Store Road and the neighbors to our farm is a problem also. And I just don't want to see, you know, talking about the liability thing with the property and mineral, I see that could be a problem too. I mean, we have horses, we have cows on our farm. And I don't want to see 7 houses backing into our farm and maybe having that be a problem. So I just am completely, I can't stop 3 houses, but I would like to not see 7.
Thank you. Next up, Kenneth Rogers, followed by Glenn Collerson, I think.
You gentlemen, I agree with everything that's been said before me. I live on Hall Store Road. I see the traffic that runs up and down it. There's total disregard for speed limit. People just zip up and down. The view for coming through there sometimes is really bad in the areas that right there where we live. Because I live a half mile down from the corner where they want to live from 33 and Hall Store. So people just go. I worry about also the water factor on a couple more wells right there for taking away from our water from that. But then there's also just the whole rural idea that y'all said in your statement. We would like to stay a rural county. Why start having a lot of houses packed in certain areas when we could have just 3 instead of 7? I do not approve of the idea. But thank you, gentlemen, for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, next up, I'm sorry, it's Glenn Corson. Should have put my glasses on.
My name's Glenn Corson. I'm the brother of Bruce Corson. I live on the property known as Corbach Farm, which is a half a mile from this intersection of 33 and Hall Store Road. I'm concerned with the speed limit in this area here because I'm living right next door to the REC, which is, I believe it's zoned as an industrial intersection, which is stated signs as being 45. Half a mile down the road at the Hall Store Road and 33, it goes up to 55. There have been accidents in our front yard, and there's been accidents in the property across the road. And with that white fence that's there that everybody knows about, that is, I've seen it busted down to at least twice, and I've actually been on a crew that fixed it one time. So I'm concerned with having houses to that multitude in that property in such a small amount of land because of the number of people coming out of their houses and with the traffic going up and down that road, because even though they go at 45, or it says 45 and 55, the traffic is going much faster than that, and you have, it intensifies because you have people coming out of their properties at that intersection, and it's a dangerous intersection. This is a rural area that we live in. I live on a farm at Corbach Farm, and now you're going to introduce at least 7 houses into this property, along this property, and I'm against that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have. Is anyone else here that would like to speak on this request tonight? All right, then we're going to continue this public hearing on to the December meeting, so that will conclude our discussion on this for now. And we'll move on to the first item of new business here, which is Amazon Data Services, SA 2023-02.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. There are 2 items. They are in different locations. You were briefed on this in your work session as to the details. I'm going to kind of run through those again. Again, these are in, thank you, Tom. These are in the geographical order of the smaller property than the larger property. The smaller property, known as case number SA 2023-02 and Lake Anna Technology Campus, has a lesser number of features for your determination for conformance and substantial accord, and SA 2023-01 is a larger property with other features, so it'll take a little longer to go through. So I thought we'd go through the shorter one first. Just a reminder of the legal status of the plan and your responsibility for determination of items that are features not shown on the comprehensive plan for substantial conformance. I can read this if you would like. Okay. Or I can go over it. I will say, for the benefit of those who are tuning in on the live stream or who are looking at this recording, the citation at the top is from the state statute, and that's 15.2-2232, and it relates to the legal status of plan and the implementation of that plan. So in this case, there is a request for determination of substantial accordance with the comprehensive plan. The exhibit provided, as shown on the screen, is different than the exhibit included in the report that was produced last week. This exhibit provided yesterday removes what was an intended new entrance point on Kentucky Springs Road and instead replaces it with an existing access point. And so instead of introducing a new access point, it would use the existing. It proposes also to use a new connection onto State Route 700, which is Haley Drive. Most people know that as the entrance to North Anna Power Station. And that's kind of the perimeter of the property. Also looking at the perimeter to the east side of the exhibit, you can see 2 substations, and those are power substations, each about 10 acres in size. And the new electrical power substations proposed would have 2 ownerships, one from REC Rappahannock Electric Co-op and one from Dominion. In addition to those features, for your determination, there also is a proposal to route a new publicly owned water line from the Northeast Creek Reservoir, and it would run down the rail line corridor that was established for the construction of North Anna Power Station, and be located within that right-of-way of the corridor. So this information is in the staff report. Again, I'm going to highlight some things in here. In terms of location, it is at the southeast quadrant of Kentucky Springs Road and Haley Drive, which is a well-known intersection in the Lake Anna growth area. The proposed project includes the things that I've described: the new street connection, the utility connections to the grid, including the 2 new electrical substations, the new water lines, and these are all as part of Lake Anna Technology Campus is to be developed. The Lake Anna Technology Campus is situated in both the Technology Overlay District, TOD, of which there were 6 geographic locations adopted in 2023, and more broadly and largely the Lake Anna Growth Area Overlay District. And within the Lake Anna growth area, it is designated for industrial development, although the property itself is split-zoned commercial and residential. The growth area designation for industrial was established in 2021. Both of the overlay districts in the county are consonant with the county's overall vision for concentrated growth, where it can be served by utilities and either in present or future with planned utilities. And also it is intended to be where high-quality jobs and businesses are directed for, again, where the areas where the infrastructure, roads, bridges, power, water, sewer, et cetera, are available or could be provided by the county. Along with the creation of the TOD and the development guidelines therein for larger setbacks and buffering from the adjacent properties, staff identified information from the 2040 plan to support a determination that the proposed project is in conformance with the plan. These are fairly numerous, and I would refer you to the end of the staff report for those items. If you'd like for me to go through them one by one, we can do that. But essentially, it's consistent with the character of the county, because what it does is it guides infrastructure investment and use of properties that are well situated within growth areas to the larger goal of having growth within growth areas and not leading to growth outside of the designated areas. And that is staff's report. Happy to answer any questions on the material in your packet. Also, I will note that the applicant and the applicant's agents are here to answer any questions you may have for them on the narrative provided in the application, the exhibit, or any other questions that you may have for them.
Do we have any questions for staff at this time?
I should note, and I'm sorry I didn't put this in writing, which was my prompt. two things that you should be aware of, which was in the statutory language. One is that within 60 days of submittal and the submittal of this application and the other application on September 26th, it is your period of time to review this. So we're within a clock at this point. That clock will end November 26th, so between now and the end of the month, that's your 60 days under state statute. Otherwise, it's considered to be deemed approval. And let's see, what was the other one? Train of thought on that one. Oh, I'm sorry. And also, the items that were in the staff report are the suggested findings for determination, which again I said in this last sentence here. If you choose to find other reasons, or if you don't agree with the recommended findings, then you could substitute those.
Any questions or comments? Apparently not. Then, since there's no public hearing with this, I think we would move on with the motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
being on your comprehensive plan committee, I will point out that the technology overlay districts are not covered in the current comprehensive plan, but we have talked about the 2025 update, and that's one of the topics that we will include in the updated comp plan. Being as how the Planning Commission and the board approved the technology overlay districts and the permitted uses therein, I don't see how we could have any basis for not saying that this is substantially consistent with the comprehensive plan. Or in conformance with, excuse me.
Is that a motion?
I'm trying to figure that out.
You asked for comment, I made a comment. I will make that a motion, that this is in substantial conformance with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Again, if I may, we recommended to you findings. You may agree with those findings, that it would be appropriate to adopt them as by reference, or if you choose to substitute, then you would want to substitute any other findings.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, and just some legal advice.
Yes, Mr.
Subsection B of 15.2.22.32 says that the commission shall communicate its findings to the governing body, indicating its approval or disapproval with written reasons therefore. And unless you wanted to rewrite your own reasons or you wanted to provide something else to craft those, I do recommend that you adopt the findings and the recommendations as transmitted to you in writing, and you could certainly just make that part of your communication to the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will include that in with the motion, that we use the staff recommendations for the written comments.
So we have an amended motion to
Yes.
approve.
And a second.
And a second. Any further discussion on this item? Then we'll move on to voting. I got the electrons tonight. I got it.
I got nothing.
He's lost. He's lost.
I got-
Mr. Brooks needs help.
Well,
Let's,
wait a minute, let me try one thing.
did you leave the meeting?
Join meeting,
Oh, why don't you join the meeting? Pick up a glove and get in the game.
present.
Say,
Let me in, Coach.
yeah.
I
no.
took another whack at it and it didn't help.
Let's do a roll call vote, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Ridgway?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes,
Mr. Cross? Mr. Cross?
Still on the phone.
Mr. Quarles?
But yell loud.
Alice?
Don't take it off mute.
Mr. Quarles, are you there?
MIA.
What's the B stand for right by the top?
Mr. Quarles, have you, maybe that you stepped away, in which case you may be marked absent for this vote.
Okay.
He is not responsive.
All right.
Did we finish?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And we'll move on to SA 2023-01, Mr. Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next, or this item, SA 2023-01, applicant Amazon Data Services Incorporated, Northeast Creek Technology Campus, is in a portion of the county. And I'm going to point out some landmarks here for orientation. I will note, as a matter of significance to Mr. Jarvis, that this is within 1.8 miles of the town of Mineral. The subject property, it is 2.2 miles from the town of Louisa. This is also a request for determination. Application's been made requesting substantial accordance determination with the comprehensive plan. The best points of reference you can see are at the north end of the property, including an access point is on US 33, Jefferson Highway, as it heads northwest to southeast toward this intersection to the southeast with 605, which is pretty close to the far right center of the map, and toward this intersection with Mount Airy Road, which is off the map in this case, but to the northwest. Heading south clockwise, kind of in that direction, heading south on 605, State Route 605 Shannon Hill Road, coming to a point where the mapping picks up. That is State Road, White Walnut, and south from that location, that intersection of White Walnut and 605, south from that location is 605 in Mount Airy, and taking Mount Airy, which is pretty much at about the 7 o'clock position and heading due north. There's a touch point to the assembled properties, and that's where an access point is shown in the bottom left corner of the 4 panels assembled, and then north of Mount Airy Road, again, to its intersection with US 33. So that's the general location of the property. The proposal is for a new road system consisting of 3 parts. One part is a new what could be termed spine road, but a circuitous route between 33 and Mount Airy, and that is to the left of what will look on your screens, slightly different on the commission than in the screens on the walls, kind of a very pale purple, but otherwise it's kind of a light purple color, and from that point through the property, it transects and transits down to Mount Airy Road. As it comes to that location nearest Northeast Creek, and where I was saying White Walnut comes from the southeast portion, there is a proposed extension of White Walnut, so a new road extension to connect to the proposed new road transecting the master plan campus. Other major features on the property include the electrical substations. Each substation is approximately 10 acres in size, and you can see the area of the boxes. 3 northmost, again, walking through the property from 12 o'clock, 3 at northmost, and then 2, and then 2, and then 1, and then 2. Also characterizing the property are the areas of development. Those are in the light green, and the areas for open space or potential park uses in the dark green. So these are all properties that are publicly regulated or publicly owned. So again, a public road and public roads and public parks. And then lastly, not really indicated at this scale, would be water line connections to Northeast Creek Reservoir, as well as the opportunity for treated water. There are some blow-ups of many of these areas, which are included in your packet. I would indicate, or I would say that in this indication of the light green, you can see some corridors, and those are utility power line corridors transecting the public park areas. From the staff report, given the location of the property and its characteristics, new street connections, new streets and new street connections, new utility connections to the local power grid, public water, and the Northeast Creek Reservoir, public sewer, and a public park, or public park lands. The Reservoir Technology Campus is situated in the Technology Overlay District, created in 2023, again, one of 6 in the county. The Technology Overlay District was created to direct the high-quality jobs and businesses to areas where the infrastructure is available, roads, power, water, as well as assemblages of land, or could be provided by the county in partnership with a development project. While the subject properties are not located in a designated growth area, as shown on the future land use map in the 2040 plan, the campus contains some road frontage on a primary highway, has an existing transmission line that crosses the northernmost point of the properties, and access to public water. This is why it was included in the TODs. The proposed campus, this proposed campus is located between and south of the towns of Louisa and the town of Mineral in their growth areas, across the highway from the Northeast Creek Reservoir, and adjacent to the Northeast Creek Water Authority and Water Treatment Facility. Along with the creation of the technology overlay districts and the development guidelines for larger setbacks and buffering from adjacent properties, staff has identified the following information from the 2040 plan to support a determination that the proposed project is in conformance with the said plan. Those are in your packet. I have, again, for reasons of brevity, I've not recited them on the screen, but be happy to go through any of those. Along with the creation of the technology overlay district and the guidelines, development guidelines for setbacks and buffering, the staff identified the information from the plan that we feel supports a determination that the proposed project, with the features shown, is in conformance or generally in substantial accord with the said plan, the 2040 plan. Be happy to answer any questions. And I would note again that the applicant and others with the applicant are here as well.
Mr. Goodwin?
Mr. Gillespie, are these new roads going to be part of the state system, or are they going to be private roads for employees only?
I'm sorry, yes, these are new public roads, correct? So
Okay.
they will be useful for employees within the master plan campus to be able to get around the property, but they will be public rights of way, which is why it's coming to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brooks?
Question on the statement on page 77. It's stating that the property is in A1 and A2 in a technology overlay district. The property is designated as rural in the 2040 comp plan and are not located in a growth area. Does the overlay district trump not being in a growth area? Or is there any action we need to make to amend the comp plan to reflect this?
Yes, sir, that's a great question. So yes, the overlay districts are in fact the law of the land. They were adopted by the board in 2023. Like with the amendments to the conditional use permits for utility scale solar energy generating facilities, or what we call large scale solar, like the amendments for short-term rentals, there are policies that the board has adopted within the last year to year and a half at the most, that have essentially changed the policies from the comprehensive plan. So they've informed what the plan is for the county by adopting that as good zoning practice. That good zoning practice does need to be updated in our plan, because otherwise the plan begins to look like it's lagging behind what the policy of the county is. All the technology overlay districts, as you remember, were selected because of their location. Again, accessible to different types of infrastructure. So this one was selected for that reason. But yes, all three of those things I just mentioned need to be updated in the comprehensive plan.
So is that action we have to?
It
Okay.
needs to be initiated by the board or commission. I mean, eventually the board would adopt it, but the board or commission, either one could initiate it.
So can we say it's substantial in accord with the comp plan without doing the other first?
Yes, because those
Okay.
policies are the policies of the board.
Okay.
So,
All righty, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And,
Mr. Goodwin?
and yes, it's already been discussed that it'll be updated. We'll start on that next year, 2024, to have it completed by 2025. So
Okay.
it's just, that's comp plan catching up with ordinance, zoning actions by both bodies.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Goodwin?
There being no other questions,
Well, I was given time for other questions to be asked, but I
Okay.
have a handful of questions. If I may, I'd like to start with a question that I was starting with during the work session. And we'll save your effort, Mr. Gillespie, and go directly to the applicant. What is a compelling reason for putting in public roads?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I would refer you to the narrative for the beginning of an answer. I would indicate that, Matt, is that for you? All right. So the applicant's agent is here. Well, can everyone hear me? Wonderful. So good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Matt Roberts with the Hirschler Law Firm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. Thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for the question. In terms of why public versus private roads, it comes down to a couple different factors. I think first and foremost, we sort of start with the idea of, as a 2232 review, we do need to put in something that furthers the comprehensive plan and that TOD overlay that the board in this county has adopted. So public roads in this sense go to what we can develop on the site. From a permitting perspective, with air quality permitting, the existence of public roads actually gives us separate campuses. If we didn't have those public roads, and in fact, if they were private, it would cause us to have a different campus layout. It would cause us to have a different campus type from a permitting perspective, and that would mean less development that's otherwise permitted under the TOD overlay. So from that 2232 perspective, having those public roads in place furthers the intention of the comprehensive plan and those county policies that Josh and staff have told you about tonight. I think from an operational perspective, there's sort of a practical reason to have them as public roads. One is that we are providing up to 375 acres of public park space with this development. That'll be worked out with the county at site plan and dedicated once we have a mechanism and a path forward on that. But in order to access that, the public has to have a public road to get there. So sort of as a practical matter, to get to those public spaces, you should have public roads. The other factor comes down to access to the site and construction traffic as well. And so these public roads, this connection and really primarily that spine road that you can see running down the center of the site more or less, really drives traffic off of Mount Airy, Shannon Hill, and takes it from 33 down the center of the site and keeps it off the primary roads. So to us, those are the sort of multiplicity of reasons why you'd have new public connections there. But again, starting with the idea that it is forwarding the county's policies, and then from a practical perspective, provides a lot of functionality for the site. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it seems to me one of the things that is necessary is your permitting. So would you characterize that as air permitting or water permitting? What permitting are you satisfying by putting a permanent road, a public road in?
Sure, and Casey Fritz with ADS is here as well.
Yeah.
But on the off chance I'm getting this wrong, it's the air quality permitting.
Air quality, and that's, why do you need the air quality permits?
So under state laws, those are required in order to operate these sites.
What part of the site do you need the air permit for?
Sure. Casey, do you want to maybe speak to that permitting a little bit in particular? But it's coming down to generators, substations, and other things such as that that are going to have emissions that need to be captured under the state law and ultimately permitted under those regulations.
So I understand it's diesel generators.
One aspect of that, sure.
Yes. So if by having the state roads in, can you tell us how many diesel generators you'll be allowed to put on this property?
Sure. Again, Casey, if you have some data on that you might be able to share in terms of the overall functions? Yeah. I know we're still working this out because the site has not been fully engineered yet, fully site planned. So just understand the answers we might be able to provide tonight are a little perspective at that point.
All
Good evening, everyone. My name's Casey Frazier. I work for Amazon Web Services. I work in the real estate team, so happy to answer your questions as best I can. Generators, typically a shell that we'll have generally about 25 generators for essentially emergency backup power in the event that there's some type of power loss on the site. Generally, we file for air aggregation permits, and then a lot of that is regulated through the state, by EPA regulation, and then through the State Department of Environmental Quality. So, in terms of the site, and this specific site in general, right now, obviously, we're kind of setting the stage, and so in terms of a total build out, I think there's still a fair amount of flexibility in what that ultimately would be. But I think right now, I think part of it too is obviously we've negotiating with water service agreement with the county right now. I would say, probably, I don't know, 20, 25 buildings is probably kind of conservatively what we're looking at for the campus. So take that and
So we're talking anywhere from 500 to 625 diesel generators on the site.
Yeah, potentially, yes.
Yeah, so it could be as much as 1 per acre and a half on the site.
Could be. And forgive me, I think the site's about, is it?
900 acres.
900, thank you.
Is what I understand.
Yeah, so it's a fairly large campus. Typically, the way that we design it we will typically group buildings in pairs. The generator yards will face inward. So there's a number of things we do. I know this is a 2232 meeting, so it doesn't necessarily lend itself to getting into a lot of the details about the actual campus designs themselves. But there's a lot of thought and care put into the placement of generators, and part of that is, I think, outlined in we have some fairly generous setbacks in some areas that we're trying to, essentially take care in the positioning of our buildings relative to our neighbors.
Yeah. Can you comment on what the electrical output size of each one of the generators is roughly for these?
I can't. I know, obviously, as part of 2232, part of that is the electrical infrastructure. We do have representatives from Dominion and Rappahannock Electric Cooperative here to answer any specific questions.
Well, I tell you what, then, as a proxy for that, if Dominion or Rappahannock could comment on what the expected demand for this site is, since they'll be providing it for the whole site, that would be interesting, because the generators have to provide that backup. So we can make some rough calculations as to how big a generator would be. Do you all have an idea of what the requested electric demand for this site is?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Lee Brock. I work for Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. I got a new title. It's Principal Engineering Manager of Energy Projects.
Very good.
Each substation is able to serve 300 megawatts of power and 300 megawatts of redundancy.
Okay, so that would be roughly, if 10 substations, if we're discounting redundancy for backup, then we're talking about
3 gigawatts.
3 gigawatts, yeah.
So I don't know that they're going to actually get up to the 300 megawatts per substation, but.
Yeah, okay, all right. It gives, so we know we're not dealing with, a 10,000 watt generator each. We're dealing with fairly substantial units at the scale of 500 to 625.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, just out of curiosity, can you all comment on what the difference might be? And I promise you, this is all going in one direction. It'll become obvious, but I got to get some facts out so I have enough to think about. If the road were private instead of public, do you have a concept of what the limitation would be on the amount of buildings you would have? I mean, just a rough number. I know that goes into this is all stuff that you haven't gone down the path long enough with, I get it, but we're just talking rough numbers right now.
Sure. So
again, I would defer to Casey for any, sort of hard math, but my general understanding is that we would go from essentially sort of 100%, sort of development capacity down to roughly 66% of that, more or less.
Yeah.
From like 3 campuses down to 2, as I understood it.
Yeah,
So you'd be,
Sure.
yeah.
So it's a good question. I think part of it is a function of strategy. So I think the intent of the public road is really it's a road we intend to finance. It's really meant to avoid any traffic on local rural connector roads. So we could easily have employed a strategy to have all of these campuses come off of Mount Airy and White Walnut, and then to not necessarily, essentially have all private roads kind of internal. I think the goal here was to find a solution that kind of worked for the county and for us to ensure that we were able to unlock the economic potential of the site while also being a good neighbor and not necessarily taking, I think, the, pardon the pun, the easy road of kind of relying on the county's existing infrastructure to like provide access to these sites and private connectors. So it isn't so much, I think, a question of if we took this current layout and said, what if that road was a private road? Likely, if this road wasn't a public road, we probably would revert back to looking to come off of the existing county and connector roads, which both from our discussions with VDOT and the county, and we agree is not really the right decision to make. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And one more thing on, before we finish with diesels and air quality. How often is each diesel unit tested? And for how long? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So again, I'm in the real estate team, so I apologize. We'll obviously, we have subject matter experts, technical teams, operations planning, so I'm just gonna speak as high level as I can. I think generally speaking, our generators are tested monthly. Usually the run time's about 30 minutes. Some of that usually is for what's called blowdown, which is to actually expend the additional diesel exhaust that's in the stack. It just helps to keep it in good function. But we're never in a situation where we're firing up like all the generators at one time, and obviously that would generate more noise. But conversely, it's just you usually have a crew of 3 or 4 people. So, typically you're going to be running through maybe 1, 2, 3 at a time, and then they'll kind of move from one step to the other. I think the interesting thing for a campus like this is even though you may have a lot of generators, I think as the crow flies, it's about 3 miles from the north to the south. So if we're testing a generator 3 miles to the north, it's not necessarily going to impact all site boundaries equally. So I think, there's obviously a lot of generator testing would happen on a campus this size, but it's not necessarily, I don't know how I'm getting at, but essentially it's not going to necessarily have this like big impact like equally around the entire site, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So talked about the road and the electrical. So let me just talk about water for just a minute or two. So, I understand that water is going to be withdrawn from Northeast Creek Reservoir to supply this, and that would be potable water and cooling water. Can you all comment on the withdrawal, the daily withdrawal from Northeast Creek Reservoir?
Sure. So we were able to kind of start delving into these numbers, and they're also subject to various staff review, both at the county level, the water authority level, and obviously with the ADS folks as well. Need to figure out exactly what the draw and requirements are without impacting the reservoir so much that you've got an issue for others who use it. The numbers we were given are on both the campus bases, so it's not as if I have a number for you tonight for Lake Anna versus versus Northeast Creek.
fair.
But at total build out for those sites, the numbers we were told by our team is roughly 7.2 million gallons per day. And in talking about that with staff, again, at the county level and the water authority level, it's our understanding, staff's analysis, that even in drought conditions, that should not have any material impact to the reservoir and other users.
All right. And at some point, after you've used this water and provided cooling and other things like this, the water has to be discharged somewhere. So can you tell me a little bit about where it's discharged and what you expect the discharge rate to be? Obviously, it won't be the full amount, but there'll be some amount of discharge rate.
Sure, yes, that's correct. And certainly, you know, this gets back to a little bit about how those new systems are going to work. I do want it to be clear that Amazon will be fully funding that infrastructure, so that's not on the county's dime in any way, shape, or form. In terms of the actual discharge, you know, that's going back out into, out into the world as opposed to reused through the system or otherwise, Lake Anna Tech Campus is going to have roughly 0.77 million gallons per day. My understanding is that discharges to Sedges Creek. And then Northeast Creek will have roughly 2 million gallons per day discharge to Despers Creek. Now, again, not totally and finally engineered, but in looking forward, that's our basic understanding, and that's the basis for the negotiations with the Water Authority and otherwise under the water agreements.
So, thank you. Thank you. And I think that's all the specific questions I have for you all right now. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate the information on that. Mr. Gillespie, I have a question or two for you, though, if I might.
Can I step in real quick, Mr. Chair? About the water?
You may step in, certainly.
Thank you. Matt didn't know I was here. I snuck in behind him, but I just want to put a finer point on the water piece. The 7 million gallon per day number that he referenced that's peak demand at full build out for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days a year. The average daily use for the campuses at full build out is 630,000 gallons per day. We did a safe yield analysis of Northeast Creek recently, completed it. The safe yield of Northeast Creek Reservoir is 3.2 million gallons per day. So 630,000 gallons per day at full build out for the campus. And remember, they don't use water in the winter, so they use the ambient air temperature to blow it through the buildings to cool. The annual water use for both campuses is 230 million gallons per year. The safe yield of Northeast Creek is 1.1 billion gallons per year. And that does the safe yield analysis that we did took into account, we modeled every day from 1980 through the end of 2022, which included, the drought of the early 2000s drought, and there was a time in the 80s, I believe, that we had a drought in the area too. So
Early 90s.
Early 90s. So it modeled both of those droughts, and we arrived at a safe yield of 3.2, which was about 300,000 gallons, 400,000 gallons more than the previous safe yield analysis that was required when the reservoir came online back in the early 80s. So the peak is right, but again, that's for a couple days out of the year, middle of July, August, when it's 90 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
On the return, what doesn't evaporate, is going back into Sedges Creek, and or AWS is looking at discharging on this campus into the Army Corps Pond, which is in the center of the campus, which ultimately flows into Northeast Creek as well. Initially, we looked at returning it back to Northeast Creek Reservoir, but with our current permit, the permit states that the inflow to the reservoir, or the outflow of the reservoir, has to match the inflow. So anything new you put in that's not currently part of the inflow has to go back over the dam. So the net increase there was negligible, and we also would have had to go on the VDH to get a permit permit to discharge back into Northeast Creek. So the Army Corps pond there is the best option, and that's, I would say that's option one. Option two is discharge directly into Northeast Creek on what is that eastern property line of the campus there. On Sedges Creek, just that is a small creek by nature, and what AWS plans to do is build tankage on that site so they can release that discharge at a rate that matches what the capacity of the creek can handle. So it's not going to be a full bore discharge into that creek on a daily basis.
So, Mr. Wade, I'd like to say you clarified my thoughts, but I'm afraid you haven't. So let me just ask a question. I appreciate the information, but let me just ask a question, because I heard the applicant state that they were going to discharge from this campus into Desper Creek. And you were suggesting that they either go into the reservoir that's on the property, which discharges to Northeast Creek, or discharge directly into Northeast Creek. So help me out here.
So Desper Creek is the creek that created the reservoir. And then on the backside of the dam of that reservoir is Desper Creek again before it intersects with Northeast Creek.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to clarify that bit. So what's the normal flow rate on the discharge of that reservoir down Northeast Creek right now?
I don't know that. But
so I'm trying to figure out what the increase is and whether or not the increase has been looked at.
so that that obviously we'll have to look at that when they're going through their VIPD's permit through DEQ, which is to enable them to discharge into that body of water. But if you've seen that reservoir lately, for whatever reason, they have the lowest gate valve open. So the elevation of the water is probably 20 feet below the top of the spillway.
I would expect that right now.
And it's always been that way. And then probably 30 feet below the elevation at the top of the dam. So, I mean, there's plenty of room, and that reservoir is probably 10 acres, 12 acres big. So there's plenty of room to discharge, even at full capacity, full water capacity. The discharge of, say it's half of that 7 point whatever million gallons peak a day, or 66% of that, it could easily handle that. But again, all of that will be vetted during the VIPD's permit process through the DEQ.
The reason I'm asking is a concern for the downstream property owners that border on Northeast Creek, and whether or not that's going to be an impact on them before it discharges into the South Anna.
Yeah, and again, it'll be evaluated during the VIPD's, but there are several different levels of intake valves in that outflow structure where, if they had to, they could ratchet it up as you go up the pipe there, and the flow will probably have to match whatever the flow today is, just by raising closing the bottom gate valve and opening the gate valve at the top that allows them to balance it in that scenario.
All right. Thank you. That does help clarify things now. I didn't ask the right questions apparently before.
You didn't call me?
Mr. Gillespie, just a question or two, and maybe, and forgive me if I look at this the wrong way, because we don't do these often, but substantial compliance with a comprehensive plan, and my phone has to be constantly asked to play the game. So here we are, though. Under the vision statement of the comprehensive plan, it says the plan addresses and amplifies the vision statement above, being we strengthen our sense of community by providing resources for residents, promoting agricultural and forestry, ensuring environmental stewardship, establishing reasonable growth areas, and maintaining our rural character. So the 8 supporting goals for this, the first one is to preserve and protect our rural heritage and natural resources. Natural resources to me, and again, I didn't have all this information when I started, but natural resources I'm considering to be air quality and water availability. Now, it sounds to me like water availability has been addressed, so I'm all right there. Air quality, I know that we would only exercise all of these diesel generators at one time if we had an outage, which is highly unlikely on a transmission system.
Right.
I get that. However, they are exercised monthly. My guess would be monthly during regular business hours during the week. And if you look at that, you have about 360 roughly 30-minute time slots in a month, in an average month, and you have 625 diesel generators to exercise. So depending on how many you exercise at once, you could consider having diesel generators running 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, every week of the year. So my question is, did you all evaluate natural resources in your findings in the staff report, particularly air quality resources?
To Andy's permit about VIPDs, it'd be the same for the air quality permit. The DEQ permit and EPA permits, of course, are what regulate what comes out of exhausted emissions. I mean, I would certainly want to ask the applicant if they would limit themselves to 5 days a week operation on diesel exercising their diesel backup, or if they would spread that over 7 days. But no, we did not evaluate air quality that's otherwise regulated by federal and state regulations.
Okay, and maybe that's not something you do in that sort of thing. I don't know. Again, this is not something that in my time, my 7 years or whatever on here that we've looked at. So when I read this, I think, well, let's go back and look at the comprehensive plan and see if we substantially comply with the comprehensive plan.
I would say, you know, in 1968, there was no, NEPA, right? There was no National Environmental Policy Act. There was no Clean Air Act. There was no Clean Water Act. So, I mean, we've had those and amendments to those acts. And so community planning, of course, began before that. And communities were developed before professional community planning. So there are many things that have taken forth in the progression of regulation for civil objective. And in this case, yes, land use is one way to look at land resources, water resources, and air resources, but there are regulations above the county regulations. We have intended that in the growth areas and the overlay district areas, we have identified those properties that have access, particularly in a TOD, to roads, power, and water that are not generally available in other parts of the county. And so at a gross county scale, we've identified those places where we best preserve the character.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Purcell.
I see there's an addition of public sewer for this project. And the application.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say this. Andy probably does have a better answer. We did not receive very much information for the commission's consideration related to public sewer. And I would defer if Mr. Wade has that information, or if others from the applicant can describe or characterize that more. We have very little information on that.
Okay.
I do. Yeah, so the nearest public sewer is at Thomas Jefferson Elementary School to the west of the property on 33. There will be a sewer line force main extended from that pump station to the site to serve the site. And our peak flow out of all of the buildings, if you'll remember, while they're big buildings, there aren't that many people there. It's all domestic use. It's about 40,000 gallons per day peak flow of the domestic sewer. Water, I guess, if you will oblige, while we're talking about potable water, will come directly from the water treatment plant that's out on 33. That water also comes from Northeast Creek. That water treatment plant has a treatment capacity of 1 million gallons. Currently, today at peak, the Water Authority might distribute 450,000 gallons per day, maybe 500,000 gallons per day. So domestic water use here matches the domestic sewer use, so we're talking 40,000 gallons a day at build out of this campus here. So there won't be any wells used, to my knowledge, for domestic or cooling purposes.
And all that goes to the regional treatment plant?
It does, yep. There'll be a new pump station or two that have to be constructed to make that conveyance. So.
Mr. Jarvis?
What was the megawatt usage that the electric folks talked about?
My understanding, and Ms. Brock, you can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was the load you all expect was 3 gigawatts total from this location? Be able to serve 3 gigawatts, yes. Any other questions?
Thank
All right. And I guess it's time for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin?
using the same rationale as for the Lake Anna issue, I move that we find this to be in substantial compliance with the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and use the staff recommendations as the verbiage to support.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further comment? Very well, then we'll vote. I think we may have everybody on board this time, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Quarles, are you present?
That's the reason you gotta address air quality.
I'm scared to get into this till this comes up.
Are we complete? Did it work? Because we don't get anything on the screen, so.
I have you all up, but I don't see your votes.
Gee.
But I have you all there now.
Has everyone hit submit? That's the.
Yep.
the magic.
It's save.
I hit save.
Yeah,
Save.
save.
She says she has them, it's just not showing them up here.
I can do a roll call.
Whatever's necessary, go ahead and do the roll call for the record to get this straight.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes?
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
All right, thank you. All right, then we can move on with next item, which is discussion.
I think we've already had a lot of that.
I believe we might have completed the discussion for everything, so we'll move on to reports. Mr. Gillespie.
Mr. Chairman and members assembled, recognizing you have some absences this month, and I've been applauded when I brief. I will use brevity again this month. So I apologize for missing your meeting last month, being sick, but unfortunately I still have some lingering symptoms, and I'll just share some other unfortunate news. Mr. Eglin delivered a paper report, or my written report last month. In that we reported that our technician, Savannah Ross, had traded from Louisa to Louisiana, which was a unfortunate loss for us and frankly for Louisa and Central Virginia. We have the other unfortunate news that our Planning and Zoning Division is going to be lacking Curtis Rogers. As of November 17th, next Friday, Mr. Rogers is leaving our neighborhood. So we are on the hunt for some talent to join us. Louisa County is a great place to work. Enjoy the folks we work with. So Also, on the people front, you know, I like to cover the Ps. On the people front, we have some training and development that's occurring within the several divisions, especially inspectors. And without getting into all the detail every time, I would just say people continue to pass their exams. We had a couple of folks testing today, so that's always a good thing. That means that, frankly, as some of the growth gets more complicated and more complex in its construction type around Lake Anna and Zion Crossroad particularly, we can have more sophisticated inspectors and inspections that are taking place. I would say on the policy front, we are trying to convene the people to get together to talk about the AFD districts. So I will be reaching out to you and Mr. excuse me, the other members as well.
And gateways.
Yes, and gateways. And I would like to talk with you individually about that and ask,
Sure.
Ask about looking at a precedent that was proposed here in Louisa County.
Right.
So I will have a, like I said, slightly abbreviated report this month, if that's all right.
Chris, the topic came up when we met with Chris this week, and I told him, I don't know if he's gotten back to take a look at the flyover that you did on
the Parkway in Henrico.
On Parham Road. I don't know how they did it,
Yep.
but I mean, that's impressive. And, you know, you put all that together for us.
Yep. Yeah, it's, you know, as we talked about when I made these presentations last year, the issue of gateways in every county or city is that there's even a different character, you know, on Whole Street Road on the approach into Richmond from Chamberlain Avenue, right? And those are both gateways to the city from different directions, very different characters. And that's the issue with our growth areas is certainly Route 15 is a gateway north to Greater Louisa, gateway south to Fluvanna. That's going to be quite different than the Courthouse Road, quote-unquote, gateway, if one is recognized there. And so I really need some direction on priorities and on what you want to tackle.
Okay.
So, you know, restricted access is part of that for a road system, but part of its architectural character, which, because our growth areas are fairly small along the interstate, are pretty limited in their definition, and we've already addressed most of that through the site design standards and the architectural design standards that were added to the code in 2021. So some of the effects are already, or some of the implementing code measures are already in the code now. If you want to expand to transportation, then that's probably going to go outside some of our growth areas because of the extended links.
Right.
Right.
Just let me know.
Okay, I sure will.
I'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any more
Concludes my
questions for Mr. Gillespie? Thank you, Mr. Gillespie.
Thank you.
I don't think we have any other announcements, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.